Let's face it, if you've ever been part of a project, any project, really, disagreements pop up. It's just part of the deal, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Clashing priorities, different ideas, sometimes just personalities not quite meshing.
Exactly. Conflict is pretty much guaranteed. But what if you could actually use that? Not just get through it, but, make things better because of it.
That's precisely what we're digging into today.
Hmm.
Look, we're not selling some fantasy of a conflict-free world.
Right, especially not in complex projects.
No way. Too many moving parts, too many different people involved, stakeholders, teams, you name it. It's just not realistic.
So what's the goal then?
The goal is understanding. Understanding what's really going on when conflict bubbles up. Yeah. And more importantly, equipping you, our listeners, with solid, practical ways to, well, manage it, steer it productively.
Turning those potential train wrecks into opportunity.
Opportunities, exactly, for new ideas, for stronger teamwork, better outcomes. Yeah. Think of this as a roadmap for navigating the bumps.
Okay, I like that. And we've got some great source material to build this roadmap.
We do. We're drawing from a mix of things. There's the Managing Stakeholders Conflicts paper from CORE, Valamis's guide on conflict management styles.
The PMBO guide, of course, the 6th edition. Can't forget that.
Definitely not. Plus a really helpful YouTube video from David McLaughlin on key concepts and an article from Capable looking at causes and types of conflict in project management.
So a pretty thorough look from different angles.
That's the plan. We want to pull all these threads together into something genuinely useful. So by the end of this, you should have a really clear picture of, the kinds of conflicts you might see, who gets involved, and crucially, what tools you can actually use.
All right, let's get started. Where does this conflict actually happen? The core text gives us a way to think about the different levels using Gordon's work.
Yeah, it's quite helpful, actually. It starts internally. Interpersonal conflict. That's the struggle within yourself, right?
We've all been there.
Mm-hmm. Then you've got interpersonal. That's the classic clash between two people.
Okay.
And then, interestingly, intra-grouping conflict. This is where it sort of stays within a smaller team or clique.
Ah, so like a specific team having issues amongst themselves.
Exactly. And understanding that difference is important. Like, if you see that intra-grouping stuff persisting, maybe it's about team dynamics. Or maybe roles aren't clear.
Needs a different fix than, say, a fight between two whole companies.
Right. Which brings us to the broader levels. Intra-organizational, that's conflict across departments within one company.
Like marketing versus engineering.
Classic example. Then intergroup, where whole teams are at odds. And finally, inter-organizational disputes between different organizations working together, or well, trying to.
And the core text points out that construction projects are kind of a perfect storm for seeing all of these, aren't they?
They really are, because they're so interactive, so many different players involved, it's complex.
Which leads us neatly to stakeholders. The core text defines them pretty broadly, doesn't it?
Yeah, basically any one person, group, organization who has some kind of interest or stake in the project.
And they can influence it at pretty much any stage. Planning, design, building, even how it gets used later.
That's the idea. Think about that construction example again.
Okay.
The core text gives some good examples, like local restaurants nearby. The project could bring them loads more business from workers.
Or it could kill their business if roads get closed.
Precisely. Or think about environmental groups. They've got a clear stake in making sure the project doesn't, harm the local ecosystem.
And these different stakeholders, their interests can be totally opposite sometimes.
Often are. And that's where the core text really hammers home the need for negotiated solutions.
So for those restaurants worried about losing business, maybe it's about looking at, improving local facilities as part of the project, or even compensation.
Could be. And with the environmental groups, even if you don't legally need a full impact assessment, talking to them early.
Consulting them.
Yes, consulting them. Trying to find alternatives that meet their main concerns without derailing the whole project that can save so much trouble later.
That proactive thing really echoes what the PMBO guide says about stakeholder alignment right from the start, doesn't it, in the project charter process?
It absolutely does. Get everyone on the same page early, address those potential clashes before they blow up. It can save huge delays, costs, reputation.
Makes sense. Okay, but what happens when conflict does surface? How do people typically handle it? Vellum has outlined some styles.
Yeah, the Valmis guide talks about different approaches. The first one is maybe the most direct. the forcing or directing style.
Ah, the my way or the highway approach.
Pretty much. The manager just imposes their solution. This is what we're doing, end of story.
And Valamis points out the downsides, I assume?
Oh, yeah. It warns that managers using this constantly get seen as, well, unreasonable, authoritarian.
Doesn't sound great for team morale.
Not at all. You might get a quick decision, sure. But long term, you end up with unhappy, disengaged people. And, crucially, you probably haven't landed on the best solution because you shut down other ideas.
Forcing doesn't mean you're right.
Exactly. Valamis uses this example. Sophia, a manager, has Paul and Kevin disagreeing about a team-building event. Instead of talking it through, she just says, "We're doing the escape room." Decision made.
Quick, but maybe not effective.
Right. She missed the chance to build consensus, maybe pick something half the team hates, sowing seeds for future problems, potentially.
Okay, so forcing, used with caution, maybe. What are the alternatives? More collaborative stuff.
Yes, thankfully. The core text talks quite a bit about cooperative negotiation, the whole win-win idea.
That sounds much better. How does that work?
Well, they break it down, based on Fisher and Nordy's work, into 5 key elements. First one, separate the people from the problem.
Okay, what does that mean in practice?
It means consciously making an effort not to make it personal. Focus on the issue itself, the problem you need to solve, not on blaming or attacking the person opposite you.
So, tackle the problem together, not each other.
You got it. See the other person as a potential partner in finding a solution that works for both of you.
Makes sense. Element number 2.
Number 2, focus on interests, not on positions. This is a big one.
Interests versus positions. Explain that.
Okay, so positions are what people say they want. I demand X. Interests are the why behind that demand. The underlying needs, fears, desires, concerns.
Ah, the reason they're asking for X.
Exactly. If you just argue about the positions, you often get stuck. But if you can uncover the underlying interests on both sides.
You might find creative ways to meet those interests, even if the initial positions seemed miles apart.
Precisely. That's often where breakthroughs happen. And this ties into what that capable article said about respectful communication, really listening to understand the why.
Got it. Okay, third element of win-win.
Third is generate options for mutual gains.
Mutual gains. So, finding ways everyone benefits.
Yeah. Instead of assuming it's a fixed pie where more for me means less for you, you brainstorm. You look for creative solutions that could actually make the pie bigger for everyone.
Expand the possibilities, not just fight over the existing ones. I like that. Number 4.
Insist on using objective criteria.
Objective criteria. Like
Things like market value, industry standards, scientific data, legal precedent, basically external agreed-upon benchmarks.
why is that important?
It stops the negotiation becoming just a battle of wills, you know. If you can ground the discussion in facts or standards that both sides accept as fair, it makes it easier to reach an agreement that feels legitimate, not just like one person caved to pressure.
Right, takes the personal power plays out of it somewhat. Okay, and the 5th element.
The 5th is consider the best alternative to a negotiated agreement, often called the BTNA.
BTNA, best alternative.
Okay, what's that about?
It's your plan B.
Yeah.
What will you do if you can't reach a deal with this person? Knowing your BTNA gives you power. It tells you when to walk away. So you can judge if the deal on the table is actually better than your alternative.
Exactly. It prevents you from accepting a bad deal just for the sake of getting any deal.
That's a really powerful set of principles. The core text had some extra tips too, right? For making the negotiation work.
It did. Little things, but important. Like how you frame your proposal, showing why it's fair.
Okay.
Clearly outlining the consequences, both good and bad, of agreeing versus not agreeing.
Makes the stakes clear.
Yeah. Also, making sure the other side feels like they've actually had some influence on the outcome, even if it's just feeling properly heard.
Acknowledging their input.
Right. And maybe counterintuitively, ending things on a positive conciliatory note helps maintain the relationship for next time.
Good point. Okay, but what if direct negotiation, even the win-win kind, just isn't cutting it? People are still stuck.
That's when you might bring in a third party. The core text discusses mediation and conciliation.
Right, bringing in someone neutral. How does that work? Mediation first.
So mediation involves a neutral facilitator, the mediator. Their job isn't to impose a decision, but to help the parties talk effectively, understand each other, clarify the issues, and explore potential solutions they can agree on.
So the mediator guides the conversation, but the parties still make the decision.
Exactly. It's informal, consultative. The core text mentions they often hold private meetings with each side caucuses.
Ah, yes. Caucuses. What's the point of those separate chats?
They're really useful. It lets the mediator build trust, dig deeper into what each side really needs or fears without the other party listening.
A safe space to be more candid.
Definitely. They can explore options privately, test potential compromises. The mediator can then use those insights to find bridges the parties couldn't see themselves. Sometimes they even bring in experts if there's a technical sticking point.
But the final agreement in mediation, it's not legally binding on its own.
Generally not, according to the core text, unless they then formalize it in a separate contract or something. It relies on the parties' willingness to agree and follow through.
Okay, so mediation is facilitation. What about adjudication? That sounds more formal.
It is. Adjudication is quite different. Here, the neutral third party, the adjudicator, does make a decision.
Like a judge?
Sort of, yeah.
Mm.
They hear the dispute and issue a ruling that is binding on the parties, at least temporarily.
Temporarily.
Yeah, the core text notes it's binding unless someone challenges it later through, say, arbitration or going to court. But in the meantime, the adjudicator's decision stands.
And unlike mediation, they don't need everyone to agree.
Nope. Cooperation isn't required for the adjudicator to make a ruling. And the core text also distinguishes it from expert determination. An adjudicator often has a broader scope to investigate the dispute beyond just the technical expertise.
Got it. So adjudication is a binding ruling from a neutral party. Now there's another approach mentioned in the core text. Dialoguing. How is that different?
Dialoguing is more about prevention, really. It emphasizes getting stakeholders involved much, much earlier in the process.
Like right back in the design phase?
Ideally, yes. The core idea is, if you involve the people affected by decisions right from the start, you can shape those decisions together and avoid a lot of conflict down the road.
So it's less about resolving a fight that's already started and more about stopping it before it even begins.
Exactly. It's about building shared understanding and ownership before positions get locked in.
And the key is that people need to be genuinely open to changing their minds.
Right.
Based on the dialogue.
That's crucial. The core text stresses that. It needs a shift from, I want this positional arguments, to a collaborative, how can we solve this together approach, using everyone's knowledge.
And there are specific ways to do this.
Yeah, the text mentions things like workshops, dedicated work groups, seminars, even open house events. Anything that fosters that shared understanding and helps find common ground early.
It sounds like a real shift in mindset, moving away from just trying to dodge conflict.
It is. The core text even mentions this trend in construction analysis, moving from conflict avoidance towards conflict managing.
Recognizing that conflict isn't always bad.
Right. Handled well, it can actually lead to better, more innovative outcomes because you're forced to consider different perspectives.
And the way you manage it might depend on who's involved, internal versus external stakeholders.
Yes, the core text suggests that. Internal disputes might sometimes end up in more formal processes like arbitration, maybe even litigation if things get really bad.
Not consensual routes.
Whereas with external stakeholders, you're often better off with collaborative approaches, mediation, direct negotiation. But the main takeaway is clear.
Talk early and often.
Pretty much. Dialoguing and negotiating upfront during decision-making is your best bet to avoid major blowups later.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Let's bring the PMBOK guide into this more formally now. How does it frame conflict management in project management terms?
Well, it explicitly calls out conflict management as a key interpersonal and team skill. And importantly, it highlights it right at the start.
Where exactly?
In the develop project charter process. The idea is you use these skills early to get stakeholders aligned on the project's objectives and what you're actually delivering.
So heading off conflicts about the fundamental goals before you even start.
Exactly. Preventative medicine, then it pops up again as vital in the develop team process.
For building the team itself.
Yeah. Being able to handle disagreements constructively is fundamental to creating a team that actually performs well together.
And it's even listed as a tool later on.
It is. In the managed project team process, conflict management is right there as a tool and technique project managers need to use actively to address issues as the project progresses.
And the PMBO guide talks about the PM's role in balancing things.
Absolutely. It points out that project managers are often juggling conflicting goals from different stakeholders.
A balancing act.
Very much so. And their role often involves seeking consensus, which, interestingly, the guide clarifies, doesn't always mean everyone agrees 100%.
Oh, what does it mean then?
It means the key players understand why decisions are being made and are willing to support them. even if it wasn't their first choice. Gaining that support is key.
That's a really useful distinction.
Yeah.
Support versus total agreement. Okay, now, David McLaughlin's YouTube video, we don't have specifics, but what's the likely gist?
Well, given the title Conflict Management, Key Concepts in Project Management, it's almost certainly a practical rundown for PMs.
So, reinforcing these ideas.
Probably reinforcing the need to understand different styles, like we discussed from Valamis, and picking the right technique for this situation. Likely a good, accessible overview of the core principles for people in the field.
A practical summary complementing the other sources. Okay, lastly, the capable article. What key ideas did that bring?
The capable article framed conflict management quite proactively, not just fixing problems, but actively spotting potential issues early.
And preventing them.
Preventing them, yes, but also seeing disagreements as potential sparks for innovation.
Ah, that idea, again, conflict as potentially positive.
Exactly. It really stresses proactive steps.
Yeah.
Identify potential clashes early, create an environment where people feel safe to speak up respectfully, value different opinions.
Making people feel heard.
Crucial, according to the article. Making sure everyone feels heard and respected isn't just about resolving conflict smoothly. It actually helps generate better ideas and builds a stronger, more cohesive team overall.
That makes intuitive sense. Did Capable talk about different types of conflict?
It did. It distinguished between task-related conflict.
So, disagreements about the work itself, how to do it, who does what.
Right. And relationship conflicts. These stem more from personality clashes, communication styles, interpersonal friction.
The people stuff.
Exactly. And the article warns that those relationship conflicts, if you let them fester, can become really toxic and seriously undermine the team.
So, understanding what the fight is about the task or the relationship is key to dealing with it effectively.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Is it a genuine disagreement about the best technical approach? Or is it that two key people just rub each other the wrong way? Requires a different response.
It all seems to come back to having that clear framework, doesn't it? Understanding the levels, the types, the stakeholders.
And having a range of tools ready. Knowing when to negotiate collaboratively, when mediation might help, when maybe a more directive approach is needed, and crucially, the value of that early dialogue.
Wow. Okay. This has been quite the deep dive. We've really covered a lot of ground, from the different levels where conflict shows up to why engaging stakeholders is so vital.
Both for causing and resolving issues.
Right. And then all the strategies that win-win negotiation, mediation, adjudication, dialoguing, a whole toolkit.
And hopefully, for everyone listening, this gives you a clearer picture, a better handle on what conflict actually is in these settings and some real actionable ways to approach it.
Whether that's in a massive project or just, daily interactions at work or even elsewhere.
Absolutely. The principles are pretty transferable.
Okay, so here's something to chew on as we wrap up. Think back to a conflict you were involved in. Doesn't have to be huge.
Mm-hmm.
Now, knowing what we've discussed today, the different styles, focusing on interests, the idea of BA to A, maybe even earlier dialogue, how might you have handled that situation differently?
Ooh, that's a good reflective question.
Could applying some of these ideas have led to a better outcome? And looking forward, what's maybe one small step you could take now in your current situation, your current project or team, to be more proactive about managing potential disagreements before they escalate?
Food for thought, definitely. Maybe it's about consciously trying to understand